So what's going
Ready.
on, everybody?
What's up?
We are ready. Woo! Hey, hey!
We're trying something different this week.
We're out of
Yep.
We
studio.
are, yeah, we've been
Yep.
kicked out of our studio. No, well, kind of, but temporary
Studio has been
remodeling of building.
repurposed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's needed for
Yep.
storage. So
we're going
um,
through some remodeling phase.
we are going to try out.
There you go.
Yeah, and so instead of trying to throw something together last minute with the uh, setup, we're recording through Riverside, which is
Yeah,
a cool little thing we got. So
Welcome to the 21st century.
I know, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
we are finishing up our four-part series um, that we started, obviously, 4 weeks ago, on Are Modern Christians too distracted, exhausted, and comfortable to live deeply rooted spiritual lives?
Mm-hmm.
Um, this week we are going to be talking about what happened to sacrifice and suffering.
Uh-oh.
Um, I mean, culture tends to tell us, comfort. That's what we're supposed to pursue. Supposed to stay away from pain.
Well, it's the
And,
pursuit of happiness, man, right?
right. And the American dream is to be able to sit on your butt all day and do nothing, um,
Yeah.
but have everything for free. So whatever
Mm.
makes your life easier, right?
I think they call that socialism.
Yeah, none of that stuff works. So the big question is: have modern Christians become too comfortable to fully embrace biblical discipleship? Right, like that sacrificing in a way that we're living our lives and showing it as an example. Beyond the discipleship we talked about like a month or so ago, where it's the smaller group discipleship that we talked about. Um, this is the leading life by example, and through sacrifice and servitude. Um, so, icebreaker question for y'all is: what comes to mind when you hear the word sacrifice?
Ah. Doing things that you don't want to do, even though you know it's going to benefit you.
All right.
I mean, for me, I think when I hear the word sacrifice, I'm thinking letting go of something, you know, whether it's something I want or something that even maybe I think I need for a period of time or for a purpose. That's what I'm thinking.
Right on. I
Mm-hmm.
tend to think right off the bat, putting putting something good on the back burner for something that's better. You know, um, you don't tend to sacrifice bad things. You know that's not typically what you do. You sacrifice good things, and um, that's what makes it a sacrifice, right? So, um, all right. So what? Let's see. Have you ever gone through a season that deepened your faith through hardship? Nope. None of the three
Oof.
of us have ever done that. We've also never
No.
talked about it on the podcast ever.
Exactly. Because we're Christians and Christians don't go through hardship.
Right.
Oh, uh,
If only that were true.
yeah, it's totally true that we go through hardship. Actually, I think all of us have had our own fair share, one way or another. And we've swapped a few of these stories before. So where I mean, but sometimes trial leads to that deepening of faith and the strengthening of faith. It's like gold tested in the fire, right? You can't get the impurities out if you don't burn them out sometimes. So
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, that's true. So of course, then the question is like you're like for instance, we had some friends of ours who went through one of the most devastating things. Like this is back in this is 10 years. No, I'm sorry, 12. When did I move here? 2013. So probably like 2010, 2011, something like that. They had a 9 week old baby who rolled over in its sleep and passed away from sudden infant
Mm.
death syndrome. We spent 3 days in the hospital. It was the most grueling, and we actually had the hospital staff ask us to leave because we had probably 40 people in there round the clock. So we took up like all of the waiting areas and the hallways and stuff, like praying and singing and all this kind of stuff. And they, as I've gone through it, the most amazing part was after 3 days when they decided to pull the breathing tubes and the feeding tubes and say, this is now up to your infant. If he chooses to stay, if he chooses to breathe on his own, then he's okay. And obviously he did not. So we, after 3 days of like just so much emotion and toil and not sleeping and stuff like that, all of us lined up in the room to kind of go around and hug the parents and that kind of stuff. And so I remember when I came around and I hugged her, she grabbed my shirt and pulled me in, and she put her finger in my face and said, "Don't you dare let this break your faith. Like, I'm not going to let you walk away from God because of this." And it was like, you're the one whose baby just died. Like, it was just kind of blew my mind. So it's like, I think there are certain people who are strong enough to go through something like this, and now they can relate to somebody on a different level. So I don't know. I went off on a tangent, but my brain decided to take me there.
That's good. I think of David, and not that it necessarily relates to this because it was because of his sin that he lost a son, but the way he responded in the aftermath of his son getting sick, and the fact that he, he did his mourning up front. When the baby passed, he got up and continued life, praising God all the while. So it's I can't imagine going through something like that. I don't know that I'm strong enough. Maybe I would be by God's grace, but yeah, that's wild.
Well, I think
For
that
sure.
what you said there with I'm not sure if I'm strong enough, or I think that's everyone. Well, maybe not everyone, but I think most people's mentality when it comes to some of these hardships and stuff. When it comes is, can I even get through this? How am I going to get through this? And just that feeling of being a little lost and insecure. That's when we definitely need God to step in, because on our own maybe we can't. You know, you've heard the phrase before. God will never give you anything you can't handle. It's like more like God won't give you anything that He can't handle. Like He can handle anything. So are you going to have Him with you or not? I think what's really interesting is, or maybe even I'll say faith building for some people is when they realize just what they were able to get through with God's help. There's things that one time seemed impossible, seemed like something they could never do. And suddenly it's in the rearview mirror and you're like, well, look, we did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
indeed.
do you think Christians in America understand suffering differently than believers in other parts of the world?
Depending
I
on the
don't think.
place.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've had some people come back from Haiti, and they'll come. I have a friend of mine who has some family who lives in Haiti, and he said every time he goes down to visit them, he said he comes back and all he wants to do is sell everything that he's got, take all the money, and go over there and start building them houses and things like that. He said it just completely wrecks him, and it takes him probably 72 hours to get over all the pain that he felt while he was there and go back to being a comfortable, you know, North American Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I agree. I
go
think
ahead.
that no, go ahead.
Say, anywhere you go,
What you got, Matt?
some people have it differently than others. Some people, have it better. You're right. When you go to some of these places that they're doing without so much, or maybe they're struggling just for food, and even I would say, what we could call a roof over their heads, because some areas are so bad that it's like, what's a roof to us? That's like completely superior to them. They have no idea what that's like to have something so good. So, you know, uh, when you're in those kinds of areas, it's like, wow, man, we don't understand it all. But then you go to these other countries that have a little better, and perhaps they're in a similar boat as we, where we just take everything for granted. Where it's not until we run into roadblocks and issues and what we consider problems that we finally start looking up instead of just continuing to go forward.
Yeah, I agree, but I want to even talk a step deeper than that, and that's, some Christians around the world are literally slaughtered for believing in Christ and teaching His word and sharing the gospel. Um, uh, just horrible, horrible ways that they're killed, and that suffering. I don't think that those of us in America, in the United States specifically, um, can compare to. I don't think that we can see it through that lens for the most part, um, because of the comforts that we have here of freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of this and that. I mean, we're a fairly free country, so I don't think that we. I think that we differ on a major scale from those in countries that pursue them to harm them or kill them just for wanting to spread the good news of Jesus.
Yep, I actually had a pastor come through, and he was telling us a story. He said, "You've never experienced fear or panic the way I have because He said he was preaching a service. I forget which country he was in. Oh gosh, because he's been everywhere. Anyway, but he said he was literally on the pulpit and he was preaching, and these guys burst in the back door with AK-47s and basically shouted in their language saying, "If you're preaching, the gospel, then you're all gonna die." And it's one of those. He said you have that moment where you go, all right, this is like, do I tell them I'm a Christian? Like, I'm gonna get shot today. I can't remember how this story. Obviously, he was telling this story, so somehow he got out of there. But it was like that's common practice in some of these countries where it's literally flat out outlawed. You're not allowed to do this, or by penalty of death. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious where we live. We don't see a lot of that kind of persecution as other parts of the world. I mean, but if you're willing to open your eyes and look around the world, then you'll see what it looks like in different facets. You got. I remember it wasn't all that long ago. I was watching the escalation of things in China, where at one minute they were kind of okay being Christians and holding churches and doing such, and then it was like, well, you can't advertise it, and you can't have these signs up, and then it's like, no, now you can't do it at all, and it's kind of, it can just as quickly be taken away as it is given sometimes. And I think what's something that we don't think about is how, well, first off, how amazing it is to have the freedom that we have here, but also how fragile that is. I mean, we live in a world where all it takes is a few key events, and then general thought processes can change on a group of people, and they can go from heroes to zeros rather quickly. And
Yep.
even in our own climate, Christians, for some large groups of people, or large enough groups of people, Christians are considered kind of, well, hypocrites or enemies in some way, because we're seen as judgmental or pushy or even racist to some groups of people. And it's wild, but all it takes is a couple of key people, key events, and key things promoted by the right avenues, and you could see a dramatic change. Even in this country, it really wouldn't take much. I mean, I remember back in 2020, when people were in lockdown, there were churches like, well, we need to hold church service, and they saw it as the utmost importance of something you can do, and yet they were getting their doors busted down, and their pastors were being arrested. And so I mean,
Yep.
it seemed they used the pandemic as a way of shutting this stuff down, but still, it's like, if was this just for safety, or was this because there was something else there? And I think that when you see a group of people that are willing to come together to praise their God, and yet even through a pandemic, for them to come in the door at that point and try to shut them down is going against a religion, which, we didn't get too much of that here in the States. But I mean, like I said, it only takes a little bit.
Yes, it does. I mean, think about how many churches shut down because they weren't legally allowed to walk into the building. It's like, and a lot of them, there's a lot of them that adapted and went digital. It's like, which is great, but at the same time, you're like, how many churches literally couldn't hold and then fell apart and then now can't get their legs under them again?
Oh yeah, I mean, and think about what they, as a society, what we deemed as essential, right? As a society, they deemed,
Right.
okay, hospitals, okay, firemen, okay, police officers, okay, religion, not essential. That's what our society deemed not essential.
Mm,
Yet to the believer, it should be the most essential
of
thing.
course. Of course. Yeah. Yeah, any of us in the trades, I think all of us had cards where like, I'm essential, I'm a roofer, I have to be out there. I'm essential, I'm a painter, I have to be out there. I have some friends of mine who actually the same friends from the previous story. They live in Michigan, and he said you would walk into a Home Depot and everything was quarantined off. He's like, you'd have this tiny little section you can go to, but it's like, we want you to stay home, but we don't want you to do anything. Like, you can't paint your house, you can't lay sod, you can't trench anything. It's literally, we just want you to stay home and just sit there and watch the news.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What a time!
Well, but you're right. I mean,
I should have invested in streaming services.
Gosh.
yeah. Had we but known. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, to your point, though, I mean, you're right. The government says this is going to happen. Everyone needs to stay home, and now all of a sudden, Christianity has become the villain. Now we have to fight them because they're trying to get everybody together and spread the disease. It's like, so that quickly, all of a sudden, like the entire perspective of the nation shifted.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's
I
just
do
one
want to
excuse.
brag on. I want to
Yeah.
brag on churches real quick
Okay.
in the United States, though. Um, that first weekend of the pandemic, we broke Facebook and YouTube.
That's true.
We said we're not going to stop. We're just going to go online. And so YouTube and Facebook had to fix their servers. They had to increase their servers in order to keep up with the churches flocking to the internet to continue to spread the gospel. And I believe it was several weekends in a row that there was just issues because they just didn't have the full bandwidth for the online. Now they adjusted that, which is kind of cool. It's kind of crazy to think that we as the United States Church and the church around the world, uh, we we banded together unknowingly and forced big tech to change in
Yep.
a way. So I think that's kind of cool. A cool thing that came from something that was very discomforting. Not to mention, one of the coolest things to come out of the pandemic was this podcast. So just saying.
Hey. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, actually, thinking back about that
Life
time,
Lucky Lemons. God
you're
bless
right,
you, so
Derek. So the church I was with a rather large church up the coast, and when the pandemic hit, luckily for us, we had online services at the time for those who couldn't make it or wanted to check us out, and so we were live streaming, and we had already had groups that had been experimenting with online groups, and so for us, it was okay, especially when we thought, hey, this might just be a quick thing, which was not the case for us up north. It was not a quick thing. But when we thought it was just a quick thing, it's like, all right, no problem. Everybody snapped to it. We jumped on our online groups. We jumped on the online services. And, we were actually great to make the adjustment. But a lot of churches like us did. And it did cause some problems. But I think what we also saw, though, is as great as it was for some of us to be able to jump to it really quickly, is that disconnect started to take a toll very quickly as well, because you had people who were excited at first. Okay, I still have a way to do church, but just as quickly, people started going, "This isn't the same." As great as it was to be able to do it, the idea of not being able to meet with each other and to be with other people. I mean, people started falling away much quicker to the online services than they ever would in an in-person service. They didn't have that person to talk to on the way in and the way out.
Yeah.
Online chats could only do so much. It was definitely a challenge in itself.
Yep. We even when we switched when Victory had switched to doing their online stuff, I've got several videos of my daughter and I who kind of acted as like a almost like a morning talk show thing. So like 20, 30 minutes before the service would start, people could tune in and it would just be like me as a host with some guests, and we'd be talking about what happened last week or what went on in your life or something. And there would always be this, all right, we're going to go live to the service. And then after the service, they come back to me and they'd be like, if you felt the call to give your life to Jesus, put it in the comments and we'll make sure someone reads out. So it's like, it was such a weird, like if you had this emotional experience and we can't feel that right now, he's like, let us know and we'll call you later, you know.
Yeah.
But you find a way.
Yeah.
So, slight shift, but not too crazy of a shift. Why do people naturally avoid discomfort?
Because it's uncomfortable.
Of course, nobody wants to be uncomfortable. It's not something we aspire to or desire.
Yeah, but I feel like the people that live in that chasing after the things that are discomfort are the people who are getting ahead in life. It almost seems like the people who are succeeding at things, whether monetarily or whatever you want to consider success, like those who are succeeding are pursuing things that make them uncomfortable. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, I think I think you got the people out there who realize that, like the ones who are fit and healthy, are the ones who realize that they need to restrict this particular thing. They have to get up early and do this particular thing, and the rest of us are like, every time I think about losing weight, then I have dinner and I change my mind. So I also avoid comfort. I mean, discomfort.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, because you have, to get in shape, you have to get uncomfortable. To succeed in business or to even start a business, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to put in the work. You have to do the work. It's funny that it's interesting how that can tie into what we're talking about because, why don't we view our faith the same way? We view our faith as if, all it's going to do is bring us comfort, which, don't get me wrong, it brings us assurance and hope.
Mm.
But it's never promised to make our lives easier. And we also, as if, think that we can be like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix and just download the Bible and everything's going to be fine into our brains, where it's like, no, you actually have to take time to read this thing. You have to actually start to apply it and interact with it in your life. And that can be uncomfortable because that means, as you started kind of earlier, Derek, when it comes to sacrifice, it's like, yeah, you got to sometimes put stuff down that you'd want to do, the things that you'd like to do, and recognize sometimes that they're not the best thing to do. And so, you have to be willing to sometimes even kind of force yourself to get uncomfortable, let alone sometimes you have to just let uncomfortable happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would
Well, and
not
I would almost
be sacrificed if it wasn't hard.
That's true. Well, and I also think that there's there's a line for there are people who genuinely get involved in good things. Like I'm particularly in a season right now where I'm involved in a lot of good stuff, and I'm having to really sit down and figure out what am I sacrificing great for good. It's like none of the things I'm doing are bad. It's like, but all of the things I'm doing are taking so much of my time that like I struggle with living a healthy lifestyle because of the how much stuff I'm involved in. Like I turn around and it's easier to run through a drive-through than it is to come home and cook a proper meal. Um, so I think there's a whole faction of the world that's doing a bunch of good stuff. I mean, look at like I'm about a chapter and a half into Charlie Kirk's book, Stop in the Name of God, and his whole thing talked about how when he got in the concept of having a Sabbath day was completely foreign, and he heard somebody talk about it and basically said, that's great. I don't have time to take a Sabbath day. That's ridiculous. It's like, and I don't know where I was going with that, but that's we went that way.
I
Well,
mean, that makes some sense.
yeah, well, we live in an era where we've used technology, and the world has just continued to get faster and more efficient. And so we are uh, kind of required, we are expected to become faster and more efficient and take on higher and higher workloads and more things on our plates. And because of that, we get that feeling like we can't take a break, like we have to keep going. Like that day we have off, we've got to do this other stuff that we couldn't have time for before. And that's the sad thing, actually, is that that's often times what people
Yeah.
have to do with their days off. It's like, well, because I can't get to this when I'm working, and I can't get to that, and because of, like, again, the expectations of the world we live in. And so we give up Sabbathing, we give up the rest, we give up the time we should be spending doing that. And the thing about it is, for those of us who have read our Bibles, especially when it comes to the Old Testament, that doesn't play well with us. God was upset that they didn't do some of the things that he wanted them to do when it comes to Sabbath, including letting their fields rest. These things were important to him. He basically said, you owe me so many years that you were supposed to be resting things, and you didn't, because they just kept pushing forward. And so, sometimes we ask ourselves, well, man, I was doing so good and I'm so busy. How did I get sick? I don't have time to be sick. It's like my wife always tells me, maybe it's God going, you need to slow down for just a couple days. Like, seriously, you owe me a couple days. You've been going too much, and you're not giving that season of rest in.
Yeah. Well, and I think to a degree, even that rest has been huge for me lately. I've been really trying to push that narrative, because I mean, a lot of the times when we say I can't rest, I have to get this done, it's completely rooted in pride. It's basically saying that if I specifically am not involved, it will fall apart. Like, what a prideful statement. And then you have those days where, like, my wife is probably one of the best checklist operators on the planet, and she's incredibly what's the word? She's incredibly good at her job and running things and making the ship work. And when she goes down hard. Like, I mean, like, when she gets sick, it's literally, I can't raise my head off the pillow for 2 straight days. And there's been part of me that firmly believes that God slaps her and says, you need a reset button and realize the world will not crumble if you are not involved. It's like, so, like, it's not so important that you push everything aside. And and I think that's where especially a lot of churches, is you get these people who experience burnout. We talked about burnout last time. And I think a lot of that burnout comes from a place of pride, where you say, if I'm not involved and I'm not doing the things, it will all fall apart. And then you get sick and go, oh no, I'm so sorry, guys, I can't be there. And guess what happens? It doesn't fall apart. So,
Yeah, I think that today's discussion goes really well with last week's, in that it's almost the opposite. It's the opposite problem, right? Last week's solution was rest and comfort and relaxing in the Lord. This week is like, are you sacrificing? Like, is this, are we too comfortable to sacrifice? So after the break, I want to dive into a little bit of the comfort problem, right? The problem of comfort a little bit, and ask some questions about
Okay.
that. But yeah, so yo guys, welcome to the Truth Response.
We see clarity in chaos.
that's right.
All right, Matt, you want to pray for us?
Yep. Father, thank you for today, for the ability to do this even online and in different locations, and just continue to guide our conversation and bring some truth out that'll help each of us, let alone everyone that's listening today, and just continue to help shape us all into better reflections of you. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 So, first question: has comfort become one of the biggest idols in modern culture?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think there's three. I think there's three idols. I think it's significance, control, and comfort. I think those are the big three. And I think comfort is all that trickier for us because, sometimes we can recognize when we're trying to be controlling. Sometimes we can recognize when we're looking for significance. But comfort is sneaky. Comfort comes in at times where we're stressed and we don't realize that that's the idol we're going to. We're just trying to get better. So yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that makes you think of that old Jim Gaffigan bit where he talks about having to wake up early will wreck some people's days. Like, you wanna help the homeless? Like, yeah, I'll help the homeless. Like, me here Tuesday at 6 a.m. Like, forget the homeless. Like, they're homeless in the afternoon too, right? It's like, so to your point, yeah, it's comfort is. I would say comfort is an idol. I'm on board.
Yeah, I think that's those three is a good breakdown of what I think is the actual idol. I think those are subcategories of what I think the actual biggest modern day idol is, and that is self. We think way too much of self, and I think that's important to recognize in this that really the part of the problem, the biggest part of the problem, is us too worried about us, and so how do you think comfort has shaped the way Christians approach their faith? I've got a lot of these, so I got a lot of thoughts on this one.
Well, I mean, let's go back to you go ahead, Matt.
That's okay. You're me. All right, so I think
you go first.
I think it's something where, in the United States, at least, comfort has shaped our faith because we're in a place where we have this freedom that we talked about earlier, where we don't feel like we have to have some urgency to it, which is sad when that happens. I think it becomes lackadaisical. Like, we think we have plenty of time and we'll get to it. And when it comes to like deepening your faith or doing that Bible study or reading that verse, whereas in these other parts of the world where they're under such persecution, they're relying more on their conviction. And that conviction is a strong motive to go deeper in your faith, to go to that study, to get that good word, to make sure that you're strong in your faith. That when you don't have that kind of thing around you, we can kind of kick back a little bit. I think, if I dare to say that, I think that when a Christian nation or a Christian people feels like they have victory in their current state, in their current living, that's actually a defeat. That when we think that it's okay to just relax, then we've messed up, because we should always be pushing forward, no matter what it is.
Yeah, what's that statement? If you're not moving forward, or if you're not moving forward and you're standing still, you're actually going backwards. But I mean, think about I did a lesson a while back where I was talking about how Jesus walked up and said, "Hey, listen, drop what you're doing and come follow me instead." And they were like, "Okay," threw their nets down and walked away. It's like, how many of us we say we are completely sold out to God, but if somebody were to approach you and say, or if God were to appear right in front of you and say, "I want you to go to Ghana and I want you to do these particular things," are you so comfortable in your life as it is right now? Would you be able to drop your proverbial nets and go follow God? Or are you so comfortable you'd be just like the gentleman said, "Okay, I'm with you, but I need to go bury my father and do some other stuff and tie up some loose ends, and then I'll follow you"?
Yeah, I like that saying that you had Dave, I say it like this. I say you're either going forward in your faith or you're falling away.
True. Yep. Nope, that's good. Yep. Yeah, the ones where you talk to people about, when's the last time you read your Bible? Nah, it's been a while. When's the last time you prayed? I don't really remember. This kind of stuff. So how do you feel your relationship is? I think it's okay. It's like interesting. Funnily enough, usually husbands and wives have different reactions.
Well, it's funny. I watched.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's funny. We can't converse like we normally do.
There's a little bit of a lag.
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit of lag on your end there, man.
Well, that's always my fault. What are you going to do? Yeah, so I was watching a movie that I loved as a kid called Crocodile Dundee. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but I absolutely love it. And there's a scene that I get a kick out of every time I watch it, where the guy that plays Crocodile Dundee is saying, oh, I read the Bible once, Jesus and his mates, they were fishermen. So, straight up to heaven for me, I'll be good. And I was like, we get to that level. It's like, I'm at a good level. That's fine.
Yep, I'm good enough.
Yeah.
I've met the minimum requirements.
What are some practical things that people do that shows that comfort has shaped the Christian faith here, at least in the United States? One example being the mentality of, when you're at church on Sunday morning, you're thinking about what you're having for lunch right afterwards, and how much time are we spending on a sermon, or how much time are we spending in worship on that Sunday, and how much of that is bleeding into our lunch schedule. What other ways are practical things that shows that we've gotten shaped by a comfort?
Let me think.
I've stumped them.
Right?
No,
Well,
just considering.
I know. I had actually had a conversation with a gentleman last week who has not been to our young adult service on Wednesday nights. And so every time I talk to him, he says, I'm sorry, my job, it keeps me away. And so I've accepted that as an answer. Some people work nights or, something like that. We had a woman who came to our Wednesday nights because she couldn't come on Sunday because her job kept her away on Sundays. So I get into a conversation with this guy and I said, so just out of curiosity, do you work overnights or something? And he said, well, no, I'm a pressure washer. And I said, okay. I said, so you can't come on Wednesdays? And he goes, well, yeah, no, because we pretty much work sun up to sundown. I said, okay. I said, can I challenge you and say that it theoretically should be as simple as you saying, I need to be done by 5 on Wednesday so I can make it because church is very important to me? And he goes, I mean, I guess I could ask that. It's like, why was that not part? So, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, if you truly want to do something, you will find a way to do it, right? If he wants, so he's been recently married. So he wanted to see his girlfriend over and over and over until he became his wife. I mean, hopefully he still wants to see her, but it's like, so he found a way, will drop things, get food on the way, change on the road, whatever, so he can make it to go see her. That's super important. So if church is not important, you will allow other things to take the place of it, and then you'll say, I got too much going on, I can't really make time for God.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We when we become too comfortable, it's like we have faith ADD. Like we're sitting back and we're trying to I was going to do that, but look at that thing over here. And the thing is that we often take our eyes off God. And one of the things that we put our eyes on the quickest is either ourselves or other people. And so I think it was G.K. Chesterton, I think that's who it was, that said, we fear men so much because we fear God so little. And that's a symptom, all right, of us being able to take our eyes off God when we should have been on him the whole time. When we start to worry too much about what our bosses or what our community or even our friends think about what we're doing instead of how we can go into a deeper relationship with God, or go to that Bible study or go to church and stuff like that. One of the most amazing things lately that I've experienced, I don't know if I brought this up on the show before. I think I did, but I was baptized. I was privileged with being the person who baptized someone a few weeks back, and her faith was just absolutely beautiful. And she was telling me a story of how she was prior to God and how different she was with God, and that was amazing. But what caught my attention is some of her friends, her longtime friends, wanted her to come out to some kind of thing one night. We'll call it a party, but it was because of somebody had something going on. It was a big event. And they're like, "You're going to be there." And she's like, "No, I got Bible study that night." And I was like, "That's amazing." You know how many people would be like, "I can skip Bible study for a night." And she's like, "No, God comes first." And I was like, that's where it's at right there.
Yep. Absolutely. When my wife and I were part of our young adult, when we were young adults, when I was in my 20s, the Bible study we were part of was every Thursday at 7 o'clock at our friend Scott and Leah's house. And I remember I used to just get so angry at these people, like they'd pop in and then it'd be 3 weeks until they came back. And then a month before they came back, like, yeah, or I'd send them a message and say, "Hey, so Bible study tonight?" And they'd say, "Well, no, I'm going to take my dad out for his birthday." And it's like, "Could you do that tomorrow?" It's like, "Yeah, but today's his actual birthday." Like, I get that. Like, but I've celebrated my birthday on different days because I had previous plans. So to your point, it's like the Bible study was really important to us, so we made that a priority. So things outside of that would then be moved over here. It's like it's not that important.
Yeah, and I think there's some flexibility there that we can lend to many different things. But when it becomes too frequent, you know what I mean? Like everywhere I get it, things come up. They do,
Yep.
opportunities come up. They do. But when it becomes too much of a pattern, it's like, which one really does have priority in your life?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if anybody questions like, you know, why is this topic of meeting together, going to Bible studies or going to church, why is that so important? Can't I just do my own Bible study and spend time with God and do my own quiet time and all of that? And I would say like the ultimate argument to doing that, what most people call lone wolf Christianity, is that is such a selfish uh, way of doing it. That is all focused on self. That is removing others so that self and self edification is the only thing that is there. Whereas most of Scripture, when it talks about edifying anybody, it's talking about edifying the body as a whole. To the extent of even Corinthians, Paul chastised the Corinthians and said, "It's great that all of you can speak in tongues, but don't, because it's not edifying to the church as a whole." You
Right.
need to have these rules set in place to where it's okay to prophesy or whatever, but you have to have an interpreter, or else it doesn't edify the body and it needs to be disregarded. So the focus has always been the church as a whole, and so I think that in our modern times we've made it about the self, and so I think that as much as it's great that you want to uh, you know, uh, do your quiet time and Bible study at home, pray and all that. That's all good things. But if you sacrifice the good thing, right, of meeting together and doing this life in Christ with others, if you sacrifice that, it's all idolatry at that point. I think even if
Yeah.
you're trying um, to stay in connection with God.
Yeah, it reminds me. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast, but it reminds me of the story of the guy in the campfire. I taught this to my students. I know I've taught it to my students a couple times, and I've taught it to my own kids. But the idea is that there's two guys sitting around. There's a teacher and a student. They're sitting around a campfire, and the student says to the teacher, I don't think I'm going to go to church. I think I can do this on my own. And the guy just takes a stick calmly and he takes one of the coals that's red hot. He moves it outside of the fire, and it goes from being red hot to kind of cold and gray. And then he says, "You see, this is the problem." He says, when that coal was connected to the fire, it was red hot, but when it's removed, it's not as hot. I mean, it's still hot, but it's not red hot like it would have been if in there." And then he goes, "Watch this." And he pushes it back into the fire and it becomes red hot again. He goes, "See, that's what it is to be reconnected with the fire." He's like, same with going to church. It's like, yeah, you could probably do it on your own, but you're not going to be as red hot. You're not going to be as on fire for God as you would be if you had that support system.
Yeah, I think of the
100%.
song "I See Fire," Ed Sheeran for the Hobbit movie, the second one I think it was. Like, there's a line in there I think that fits Christianity perfectly, and that's, "If we're going to die tonight, we should all die together." And that mentality of like, it's all of us, all of the feelings, all of the things together as one. That idea that all the coals together will burn out together. Um, the fringe, will die off first, and the center will die off last. But it kind of consumes everything together, and we're called to feel things with each other. If one of us is mourning, we're all mourning. If one of us is celebrating, we're all celebrating. Just that identity as one in Christ as the church, I think is super important to remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like the invention of live stream and stuff. I've talked to several people who I haven't seen at church in a while, and they say, "Oh, I still tune in live stream. It's just I got so much going on that it's like I don't have the time to get up and drive to the church and do all the stuff." And it's like I keep reminding them that the problem with like as great a tool as live stream can be, like we've got people in Cambodia and Ethiopia who tune in and watch our church. That's great. I know for a fact there's a gentleman who used to come to our church, but he doesn't. He watches all the live stream because his wife has a debilitating issue where she literally can't physically leave the house. So this gives an opportunity. Okay, cool. But for those who can get up and leave, it's like you are removing the personal aspect of the church experience, and you are robbing other people of getting to find out what's inside of you. So what has God given you? What are you not able to pour into others because you're just sitting at home on your couch?
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, we got to think about who we really are. It reminds me of C.S. Lewis. I had to, as you were speaking, I kind of looked it up real quick because it's one of my favorite quotes from the book, Mere Christianity. But we think about ourselves, and he talks about that. He says, the more we get what we now call ourselves out of the way and let him take us over, the more truly ourselves we become. And I am not in my natural states nearly so much a person as I like to believe. Most of what I call me can be very easily explained. It is when I turn to Christ, when I give myself up to his personality, that I first begin to have a real personality of my own. So it's really just staying in Christ that really defines us. And so, but also we got to keep in mind being in Christ is being part of the body of Christ. So our personality is lacking if it's not part of the greater sense of what the body is. And the body is made up of all the many members, and so to continue to pull yourself back is to pull yourself back from what you're meant to be at the forefront.
Yep, you got it.
That's good. I love that book, that Mere Christianity. If y'all haven't read it, like, Mere Christianity is probably one of the best books I've listened to technically, but read. So I know I'm a listener instead of a reader, but Mere Christianity is so good. I think I've listened through it twice now. But it's such a simplification of Christianity to its basic points, and makes it not daunting, and it makes it really understandable, even in an accent, if you will, using more proper English. But it's really good. I want to shift into, this. We've covered the fact that sacrifice is needed, and we've been talking about comfort and what it looks like to, you know, to follow this idol of self. Um, okay, so most of you probably are out there thinking, "Yeah, got it. What what's it supposed to look like?" So
Right.
what is the cost of following Jesus? What does taking up your cross actually mean today?
Ooh. Pastor Matt?
I would say the cost of following Jesus is everything. It's funny because it's free, but it costs everything. It's putting yourself down, all the desires that you think that you want, that you're told by this world that you want, and putting him really as Lord of your life. What he says goes. It's not about what I say. It's about what he says. It's really about who's on the throne. And oftentimes we keep trying to put ourselves on it instead of him. He's got to stay on the throne, which means we have to put ourselves second to him. And then, even when he is on the throne, we have to then do it a second time because he tells us that if you want to be first, you have to be last. If you want to be great in his kingdom, then you have to serve others. So once again, you humble again so that you can do the good work that he's given us to do.
That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
very good. Yeah, and dying to self, man, is one of the biggest struggles, uh, and even just trying to reshape your mind to think of others rather than you immediately. I think of like when I've been in charge of like the tech at the church or whatever, and there was one time in particular, Lizzie wanted to clear the entire stage when she was doing children's ministry for VBS one year, and I immediately was like, "Nope, we're not doing that." And then I got humbled and corrected by the senior pastor at the time, and told, well, that's not an option. You are going to clear it off. That's we're doing something for a bigger purpose here, and we're all in this together. And so, um, getting away from that mentality of like, it doesn't make me feel good. It's gonna be hard. It's not easy. I'm gonna feel uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. The list goes on of excuses. Getting away from that mentality and leaning into hearing is actually uh, what might actually be best for the kingdom as a whole, and getting in that mindset of, okay, I'm listening to this person who's in front of me. This is what they're suggesting. How does this impact the kingdom? And really leaning into that against your own selfish desires, honestly, which I believe James tells us drags us away and kills us. So, just a thought.
No, it's brilliant. I have nothing to add.
Nothing.
Nothing. Delete.
You guys said it perfectly.
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah.
what what uh what are some sacrifices believers rarely talk about?
Hmm.
Um,
Sacrifice.
well, I think that in our general sense, you know, we we forget that there's more than one thing to give, even with it to the church. So, like, people get focused on giving, sacrificing, and a lot of times they think financially. And okay, yeah, that's a part of it, but it's not just your treasure; it's also your time and your talent. And and it's amazing. And let's just talk about those two things individually, real quick. So, when you're giving of your your talent is amazing to be able to come alongside people in the church that need help, and your church itself. I mean, we couldn't have done some of the renovations we've done here in the church that I'm at because without those people that had the skills to come alongside us and go, all right, I can do this, I can do that, and that it made such a difference to the kind of things, especially when you're balling on a budget. But what you can do for someone sometimes is fantastic. It's way more than giving them money. And sometimes money is so impersonal. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the church still needs money. People, charities, these organizations, they still need people to give financially to them. But sometimes the ability to come in and put hands and feet on the ground and do the work can go a long way. When it comes to your time, though, it's another thing that people discount way too often. Sometimes just giving of your time can make a huge difference. I've talked to people. I mean, as a pastor, I've walked into situations that are happy, but I've also walked into situations that aren't happy, where people are sick or dying. I've been to the hospital. And I remember somebody telling me that before I ever went to a hospital visit myself, they're like, one of the most life-changing hospital visits for that person was they went into this room where somebody was terminal, and they didn't know what to say. So they just sat there and they just spent the time. And when they left, they said, man, we really want to thank you. And then afterwards, they said, you really made a difference by being there. Sometimes it's not about what we're doing. It's just the fact that we're willing to give something ourselves that is maybe one of the most precious things we have, and that is our time, that we actually put ourselves aside in a completely different way to be there, to be present in a new way, in a way that maybe is uncomfortable. In that sense, it definitely was. And it makes a bigger difference than people realize.
That's good.
Yeah. And I think that's the other aspect of that a lot of Christians don't understand, especially when it comes to pastoralship. It's like they don't see the pastors going to do these things and going to sit with people at odd hours and things of that nature. And I think that's, people have this weird perspective that pastors don't really do much. It's pretty much like you wake up, you sleep in, you get up at noon, you go to the church, you sit there, you play on your computer, write a couple of things, you make a couple of phone calls, and you preach on Sunday. And what are you really doing? Pastor Matt, you're so lazy.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I get, yeah.
So, but I think
Common misconception, man. That is a common misconception of
100%. I mean, and we've had
all the levels of church, people that work at a church, not just pastors, but anybody who works at a church. They have this common misconception of they do these 2 or 3 things and that's it. That's all they do.
All they do is go to meetings and they have conversations and they go to coffee and they go to lunch and things of that nature. But I mean, even we've had projects around the church where it's hey, listen, the tile in the front foyer is really damaged, and so we're going to get a bunch of dudes together and chip it all up. And everybody's like, well, I have things I have to do, and so I can't really help with that. Plus, I give to the church already, so it's all right, you're missing something.
Yeah, haven't we hired somebody to do that? Don't we pay somebody to do all of these things? I've heard that a lot, and unfortunately, I've heard it in eldership at times. Not recently, thankfully, but I've heard that very thing. Don't we pay somebody to do that, or we have to give this person even more extra work in order to justify making them full time or paying them more or whatever that might be. And it's okay, first off, have you ever done the job? Do you actually know what it entails? Do you know what these people are going through and dealing with? It's kind of like saying a firefighter, paramedic only, goes out on calls and puts out fires, and then they go home and sleep well at night. People don't do that about other jobs, but yet, when it comes to clergy, that's all you do. And I think it's tainted by what the world thinks of Christianity. I really do. I think that is a worldly conception of their perception of the church leadership.
Well, there's also
Well,
a very hard truth that people don't want to embrace. And the hard truth is that if you had 100% of the people giving their actual proper God designed tithes and offerings, the church would be in a position to hire people. Most of the time, they probably hire them from the businesses that are inside the church to bring people on and do the things. But the hard truth is that usually less than 20% of the people who go to your church are actually giving to the church. So you're typically running on a bare bones budget. Half the time the pastor doesn't take a salary for an extended period of time. Our pastor went, I think, 3 years without taking a salary because there just wasn't any money coming in. And so because of that, then we're like, well, we'll use the tile as an example. This happened recently at our church where we had, it was an old movie theater, and so a lot of this tile was broken and chipped and literally caving in. So we were covering it with entry mats. It's like to keep people from stepping on it, and it was getting dangerous. So then it was, hey guys, we need to bust this up, and we don't have the money to do it. It's like, well, we all tithe, so where's the money going? Like, we have 40 churches spread across 9 countries. That's where it went. It's like, we're trying to spread the gospel, and little things like fixing something at the church can something all of us can come together and help out with.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of
20/80
assumptions.
rule.
A lot of assumptions on what does or does not happen. It's really wild, and it can go negative or positive. I'll give you an example. Like you guys have given a couple of negative examples, but people really take for granted how much work goes into things, to the point where they're like they don't get that that we're busy, like that there's so much that goes into a Sunday service or a Wednesday night service or any of these things. Like there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of prep, there's a lot of cleaning, there's a lot of there, and it's weird because even like you said, Derek, earlier, the idea that, well, we have to justify being able to pay someone more by giving them more work, that's definitely a societal thought. It's not, it trying to give more work. It's like they already have so much that they're doing, and yet you want to put it more so that you can pay them more. It's like that's not really fair at that point. Like they're just stressing them out. But I digress. On a positive note, though, it's interesting when people find out just how much work goes into it, and they have a different appreciation for it. So, for instance, and it's funny because we had this happen about a year ago. Well, just under a year ago now. One of our students that was related to someone that works at the church, whose grandparents worked at the church, came in, and she's like, you guys do stuff during the week? And they were like, are you serious? Your family has been doing this for generations, and
She
you
was
had no idea.
too.
Yeah, had
She
no.
really meant it.
Yeah, were you here that day, Derek?
I was there for that. Yeah, that cracked me up. I was like, what?
So
Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, they get a new appreciation, and you get you get even volunteers, that start out maybe in lower levels and such, and then they start getting involved in these bigger programs, and they start to see that kind of behind the curtain view where it's like, wait, this much work goes in. Yeah, this much work goes into this, and for some, it's like, wow, that's, it's funny because some people it's too much for them. They're like, I didn't want to go in that far. And that's really revealing in itself. But for some, it's like, wow, they get a completely different appreciation for what we do and the amount of work that we have to put into things. People see a pastor or preacher get up on a Sunday and give a message, and they're like, okay, so he got up and he gave a message for, I don't know, 20 minutes to 45 minutes to sometimes longer if you're Nicky Antorn. But but they don't realize that, for some preachers, they have to do this every week, and every week they spend the entire week studying and wrestling and praying and working and working and working and then practicing and then polishing and then trying to get it right so that when we bring it, we know it's what God wants and it's the right message and all this stuff. That takes way more work than people realize, especially when it's done properly and right. They think it's like we can just, and trust me, there are preachers that can just open up a Bible and go. And, there's some pros out there that really know their stuff.
props to those guys.
Maybe there's, if I had to go up there, I could probably put something together. But, we want to bring our best, and it takes a lot of work to bring your best, even when you've been doing it for years. And so, but that's part of the sacrifice we make. we put in the work for, so even though we know that people don't know about it, don't appreciate it, you know, and take it for granted all the time.
I
Yeah.
want to talk real quick about um, just kind of an example. When you might look at that a pastor or minister or somebody who's doing ministry and look at the sacrifice. They're not spending enough time with their family, or you know, doing not doing enough with their family, and then those same people tend to turn around and say things like, um, well, you know, aren't you supposed to go to, you know, see this person in the hospital? Aren't you supposed to go see the, you know, whatever? And it's like, well, yeah, I am. But if you were to do that for me, you know, I would actually get to spend time with my family. So sacrifice on both ends of that are important. It is important to realize that, you know, if you're in ministry, it doesn't matter whether you're paid or volunteer. When you're in ministry, sometimes it requires sacrificing family time. Sometimes it requires sacrificing some important things that you may see as important. Um, and that's hard. And it's something that you don't want to do, hence it being a sacrifice. Um, but at the same time, like if you're on the flip side of that, if you're part of the 80%, you know, not the 20 doing the 80%, but if you're on the part of the 80%, right, not doing more than 20% of the work, maybe it's time that you experience what sacrifice looks like in ministry. I mean, I'm not saying you haven't sacrificed before, but maybe God's going to call you to that next step of like, all right, I'm all in. I'm going to dig into this, because if we're all sacrificing, then we all have to sacrifice a little less because we're bearing each other's burdens. And I think that something that goes unseen, we were talking about that, something that we rarely talk about, is that as people in ministry, our families get the brunt end of a lot of stuff, and it's not stuff that we can generally shut off. As far as like, well, you know, it's not their fault that we had a bad day. It's not our fault that we had a bad day. It's sometimes, you know, people in the hospital dying. It's sometimes going and sitting with somebody whose kid just died. It's sometimes it's, you know, there's a lot of things. It could be, you know, going and sitting with a family at midnight because of domestic violence. Um, and making sure that there's a presence there if someone were to come back, you know. Like there's a lot of things that we in ministry, and some of you in ministry out there listening, like we go through, and we're willing to sacrifice sleep and work hours at times, which is also money, and time with family, and maybe even award ceremonies, or you know, whatever that looks like, a baseball game, you know, of our kid. Like there, sometimes we have to sacrifice these things, and unfortunately, it's more about looking at it from the kingdom perspective and not the personal perspective. And the more that we are doing it, the harder it is on our family. But I think it's an example that's being set for our children, and the way that we talk about it is how they understand it. So
Yeah, it's a lot of stress too on the family because, you know, a lot of people don't think about what it is. Like being a pastor, you know, my family has to come with me. You know, there's not a lot of people where they're constantly parading
yeah,
their family around their jobs. First off, my family's always around my job. We're always here.
yeah,
We're here for everything. And sometimes they're like, I'd like to go somewhere else besides the church, you know? And not only that, but like, you know, as my wife, you know, she's a pastor's wife. So, and we're all put on a microscope. We're put on a pedestal. Like we got to be the most perfect people. And it's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of stress. And then if it's not me or my wife, it's my kids. My kids didn't sign up for any of this. You know, they didn't get a choice here. They had to come with me because I said I'm going into ministry, because God called my wife and I into
Yeah.
this. My kids have to come, and now people are judging my kids. If my kids step out of line, people are like, "What's going on with your kids? It's wild, the amount of pressure that gets put on. But this is part of the package, and it's one of the hardest parts of the package. But like, you have to lay everything down sometimes, and people don't get what it does to you mentally, emotionally, what it does to your family. They don't consider these things. Especially the consuming Christian that just likes to show up on Sunday and hear a nice message and go about their week. And for those who just come in, and I like to call them ticket punchers, they did their time and then they go on as if they didn't hear anything that day. It's like you're really taking for granted what God is trying to do for you through all these people who have the heart to respond to such a calling, you know. But that's the thing, is the hearts of these people who are answering this call are so big into this that we lay ourselves down for you, even though you might do that, because there's that chance that you might just hear that thing that's going to finally help you take it a step further, that you might just hear something you've never heard before, and you might accept God for the first time. And because of that, we give everything we got.
So with your permission, I wanna push back and ask a question just a little bit. So one of the things I've struggled with the most is, like, I hear these stories about a pastor who says, "Hey, my kids grew up in church and they slept on the pews because of how much time I spent at church, and I've met these kids, and these kids borderline hate their parents because they were sacrificed on the altar of ministry," basically, if you want to put it that way. So I've always kind of felt that my family is my first line of defense. They're my strongest warriors, and if they are not strong in God, if they are not pursuing, if they are not loving God, then I'm failing them because I'm pursuing these people over here. So I have always put this practice in place where about every few months I will sit the whole family down and say, "Hey, how am I doing? Like, am I ignoring you? Like, do you feel like you still matter? Like, are there any issues? Am I overcommitted here? Am I overcommitted there?" Now, given I'm not a pastor, I was like, so it's a little bit different. So, like, I have a full-time job and I'm a young adult director, so I'm very heavily involved in ministry. And it's like, but then I also have a family. So like, for instance, my wife and I have kind of made it very clear that, like, there are a few non-negotiables for us. Like, if I'm at my daughter's volleyball game, which lasts 1 hour, and I get a call from somebody saying, "I really need to talk to you," it's like, I will come and find you after the game is over. It's like, whatever you're going through can't be so. And unless it's like I'm in a car crash and I'm bleeding on the side of the thing and I'm the closest person, then yes, Kaylin, I'll come back. I'll be back. Somebody's dying. Like, that makes sense. But if somebody's going through a hard time and they just need time to talk, like, you can wait an hour. Like, I need to make sure that they know that I'm there for them. Hey, now Daddy's got to go do this thing. But what's your all's take on all that?
I think I understand that pushback, and I, to some degree, don't disagree. I did say, that sometimes we have to sacrifice family time and things. I think that if that's all there is, I think that's also a problem. But
Yeah,
I think the biggest thing that I think the biggest thing that will change that mentality is that communication with your kids of, this is what I'm doing. Not just like church is more important, because that's what they can easily see if we're not communicating with our kids. But that, here's what we're doing, and if
Yeah.
you can make them a part of it, do that. I think that teaching them um, what it looks like to sacrifice for Christ and the church is an important thing to do, and that takes good communication with our kids. I think that takes with our families in general, and I think it takes checking in. Definitely being like, hey, is this too far? Um, and having that conversation, because something that could look like we don't have much time together, but we have this couple of hours, once a week, very intentional. Sometimes that's all that's needed for a season.
Sure.
And the answer could be, no, we haven't taken it too far. We've we've dug out this time intentionally. We're keeping it. or good, but the conversation's important, right? And I would say to anyone out there who's at that point of having, thinking through this in this way, um, having the conversation of am I doing too much? Am I sacrificing good for or am I sacrificing great for the good? Those kinds of things. Am I sacrificing my family on the altar, or is my family sacrificing together? I think are important questions, and I think that it should be a both and with what you're saying. Your mentality towards it. That they need to understand that there are some times where it's like it's not about us.
Yeah.
I think that the world has dug into Christianity to the point of like, if you miss your kid's volleyball game, you are a horrible dad.
Right.
That's ridiculous. Um, Sometimes there are things that are more important than our kids' volleyball game. Not more important than our kids necessarily, but more important than an activity that they're doing that you've been to plenty of the games for and the practices and have supported them in.
Yeah.
So,
And like
go ahead.
I was gonna say, like Pastor Matt said, it's a pattern. If all
Right.
of a sudden I've missed 3 of my daughter's games and now it's 5 and it's 6 because I'm constantly now I'm telling her they're more important than you are. It's
Right.
like, so just to kind of further
Unless it's
Pastor
been
Matt.
well communicated, right? Like, unless it's been well communicated with your kid and you're talking through the things with your kid's good with it, that's a different story. Um, I think that depending on the situation is important too. I think we can't blanket shotgun all of the situations, but sometimes things come up so that we can be tested and tried uh, and purified through fire, right? Go ahead, Matt.
I think that you guys are. I mean, we're all kind of in agreement with one another. It's not really at odds. I mean, these things are important to make sure you establish certain right rhythms. I mean, we get. I mean, I said earlier, yeah, it's really easy to realize that you've spent most of your time in the church building, but trying to make sure your kids have their own things to do and that you're supporting them in that. Keeping date nights on the calendar with my wife. And it's both of us that have to do that because, she gets busy and I get busy. And next thing you know, we're like, we need a date night. Like this needs to happen.
Yeah.
And my wife is really good at sometimes I need her to help me recognize when I put my blinders on because I get focused in ways that I don't understand. I'm overly focused and I lose track of other things. And it's easy for me to like overlook some of the simple things, not like the big things, but the simple things, And so I need her to call me out on that so that I can help make myself readjust and put some other things in priority. But I mean, it's good. That goes with a lot of things. I mean, it's not necessarily unique to ministry when it comes to balancing out things. But what is, I think, unique to ministry is the idea that like, we're bringing them into an environment where, I mean, what we do is important, but, this is now part of our lifestyle. If I were to work I used to work in automotive. If I was working at a car dealership again, maybe they'd stop by from time to time, but that's not part of their lifestyle. Church is part of our lifestyle. It's part of who we are as a family. It's part of who we are as people. And so, yeah, taking that time to sit down with your kids, I think is important to talk to them about God, to talk to them about why we do it, what your convictions are, what's important to you, why it's important to you. Those kinds of things are, and then also having the conversations, especially for my kids, I've had to do where because we are, because people put us up on that little pedestal or the judging eyes are always around to have this conversation of what that feels like and the fact that, it's not fair and the fact that, why it's still important that we keep moving forward, but at the same time, understanding where they're at and how they've been looked at and how they've been treated. And the same goes for myself and my wife and be able to discuss those things. I mean, my wife and I, we talk about it all a lot when it comes to different aspects of ministry, the good and the bad. Because sometimes you have hard days. Sometimes it's really not easy. And then sometimes it feels like you're on cloud 9. and you got everything in between. And so communication is key. And sometimes that's why I'm glad my wife is very vocal to me. Like if I've missed something, that she helps keep me on task, on the right way, and or goes, hey, you've been this way, great, but you've not been doing the laundry. Oh, okay, then I need to make sure I'm doing it. Something as simple as that sometimes, because my blinders are on and I've been going so steady at whatever goal I'm going at.
Yeah, I can't stress enough that this isn't just ministry staff either. Like, this is when you are doing ministry, right? When you're all in, when you decided that Jesus is what you're doing it for, and that you're listening to the call and trying to meet God where He's working. This applies to all of those people as well, and the deeper you dive, the more you sacrifice, the more you're serving. And I don't mean like as in like a check boxes or anything like that, but as you dig into what this looks like, deeper and deeper, the more you're probably going to have to come across these things and have these conversations. I think about my mom, who's not paid ministry, but she's volunteer ministry doing missions and whatnot. And there is just there. This is the lifestyle. This is how the family's going to have to be, and this is what the family's going to have to do in order for this to happen. I think ministry is a calling. I think there's a calling on each and every one of our lives, and I think that in order for us to fulfill our calling and to be in the right place, we have to be open to it and listening. So,
Yep. Nope, that's good. That's good. You want to final thoughts it up, or you more you want to talk about?
yeah. Let's get some final thoughts in there.
Well, I would say-
Remember, for final thoughts, we are talking about sacrifice and suffering, not. I don't want people to be confused, because last week we did talk about burnout, right? But
Yep.
this is the opposite side of that coin of like, what does sacrifice and suffering look like? What does it do for us? What are we called to? So, final thoughts.
Yep, I got you. I would definitely say and I'll let you go next, Pastor Matt, but I think one thing we touched on earlier, everything is perspective. That's one thing that has really been prominent to me in the last couple of years is I have a perspective from where I'm sitting to see what you're doing. This is what is translating to me. I've done this even with my wife. It's like I accidentally got myself into a position where I'd come home and I would, well-meaning, I would say, so what did you do today, right? And somehow, however I was saying, it was translating to her as, well, what, do you think I'm just sitting around here all day? It's like, no. Like, though, from my perspective, if she has the day off and she's here, my perspective is, well, there's probably not a lot going on until I sit down and I ask her, what did you do today? And genuinely ask. And then once she tells me what she did, I go, oh, wow, you were busy today. And I think one of the big mistakes a lot of people make, especially when we're sitting in the congregation looking up at a pastor or even anybody else in ministry, is going, my perspective, seeing what you're doing right now is, and they fill in a bunch of blanks. And I would highly encourage those people to do a little investigation, sit down and say, please walk me through, because I want to understand how much work you're putting into this. And I think a lot of times what happens is people push aside the investigation because that's discomfort. I don't want to have to get up and go have an awkward conversation and then now and then God forbid you get proven wrong. Proven wrong is going to hurt your ego, and sometimes I think you need to sacrifice your ego and go, I could be wrong in this situation, so I want to understand.
I think when it comes to sacrifice, my final thought would be, first, God sacrificed for me first, and He sacrificed for you first. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that we can't pay Him back, but we can start to kind of pay it forward. But one of the first things we can do, sacrifice the idea that we need to be in front of Him. We shouldn't be. He should always be in front. Second thing is to be willing to put ourselves aside so that we can continue to do the will that He has for us. Be open to His instruction, His leading, His calling, if that is so in your future to be done. Um, and even though it may feel uncomfortable, even though you might be scary, um, it's always going to be worth it. So be willing to set yourself aside and just do what you're being led to do when it's by God, that is, and you think you'll find it's on the right path.
It's good. It's good. Um, Closing question for this topic would be: at the end of our lives, and this is just a self-reflective question. At the end of our lives, will we be known for pursuing comfort or faithfully following Christ wherever He led us? And that's pretty much your options, right? Like that's where it's at. Was it self sacrifice or self idolatry? Um, so so that's something just to be thinking about. Also, just to wrap up the series, the first week we talked about distraction. So what is stealing our attention, right? What things are stealing our attention? Consumption, right? Consuming content. Uh, why isn't all the knowledge changing us, right? Where is that switch from knowledge to actually doing what the knowledge is teaching us to do? Um, the third week was exhaustion, and why are we so worn down? Um, are we doing? Are we sacrificing the great for the good? I keep going back to that. It's such a good statement that sometimes we're doing all these good things and we're sacrificing the thing that God's calling us to because we think we're doing all these good things. And so, why are we so worn down? And then today, what does genuine, enduring discipleship actually require? Like, what does that look like? What is this sacrifice and suffering look like for us? So, um, yeah, really great to dig into these things. I think it was a solid series, something that we need to reflect on. So like, subscribe, do all the things. Check out our Patreon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Patreon, baby.
And if any of you like to do social media or know somebody who likes to do social media for no paycheck,
Right. As a
do you
way to
want to do
sacrifice.
ministry? Do you have a calling on your life to, help us out with social media and getting noticed? Well, let us know.
We've got a
Um,
job for you.
but yeah, we've got a job for you. Oh, sorry. Had a flashback of my childhood.
Right?
Thanks, guys, for tuning in with us. We may or may not be back in person next week. I haven't decided yet. We have to look at what that all looks like and what our time looks like. But we will at least be on remotely with you guys. And thanks for everything you do. We love you, and God bless.
God bless.